The 1986 Miami FBI shootout, that is an incident that changed ballistic testing forever. It changed a lot of different things here. So what I want to do is discuss and do some ballistic testing of some of the event that happened that day in 1986 in Miami. And some of the things that came out of that were that a certain particular round of ammunition didn't work right, and they had to switch to something a little bit different to work right. So what happened that day was there were two bank robbers, Platt and Maddox. I forget their first names, but they robbed a bunch of banks, they shot some people, etc., etc. Long story short, they were cornered by the FBI in Miami, and they try to do a felony stop. These robbers start shooting. One of them, Platt, starts shooting with a Mini 14 rifle. And then after that, a lot of events happened that changed everything forever. Now at that time, the load used by the FBI and the guns used by the FBI were primarily 357 Magnum revolvers or 38 Special revolvers, and they were loaded with the FBI load. And what the FBI load is a load that was created by Winchester back in about 1972. What it was a lead semi-wad cutter, 158 grain hollow point. Some people just call it a lead hollow point, loaded to a plus P pressure, and that cartridge will achieve between 890 and 900 feet per second in a 4-inch barrel. That's the official FBI load. And that was used in revolvers regardless of whether or not the revolver was a 357 Magnum or 38 Special revolver. Some people report that in that incident, 357 mag was used. It was not. 38 Special was the only cartridges fired from the revolvers. Now, 9mm pistols were also used, and the use of those, though, were regulated basically to the SWAT team members of the FBI. One of those members was Jerry Dove, and he had a 9mm pistol, and he played a big part in this, and I'll explain a little bit further in a minute. So Jerry Dove, being one of the FBI agents on the scene, he had a 9mm pistol, and the actual pistol used was a Smith & Wesson Model 459 with a 4-inch barrel. I don't have a Model 459, but I do have a Ruger Security 9 with a 4-inch barrel, so I'm going to use that for the ballistic test. And the other main guns here, there was some Model 60s and other revolvers, I believe Model 13s. But the person who stopped this event stopped it with a revolver, and his name is Ed Morales. And he was actually carrying his personal weapon, which is a Smith & Wesson 686 with a 4-inch barrel, and that was approved by the department to carry. So just like this, a 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 686. This was the weapon used on that event, and he was using the FBI load. So we're going to talk about this ammunition here real quick here. So the round in question that did not work correctly was the Winchester silver tip 9mm. 115 grain 9mm silver tip fired through a 4-inch barrel. It is possible that since 1986 this has changed a little bit, but I've done a lot of looking at photos, and honestly it looks exactly the same to me. So this, when Jerry Dove shot this, he had a perfect shot on Platt. Platt came out of a car with a rifle. He was moving around to a different position. Jerry Dove shot him, and it went through his bicep, basically. Went through the artery in the bicep, missed the bone, entered the thoracic cavity from the side, did not hit a rib, and went in and stopped an inch short of Platt's heart, which did not stop that gunfight. And at that moment, nobody was seriously wounded yet or killed. But at that moment, Platt got out of the car and he started shooting and came around the position where Jerry Dove was and his partner. The name loses me right now. Ben Grogan. And he shot both of them, killed both of them, and then seriously wounded a whole bunch of other agents. If that 9mm would have went just like 2 inches deeper, that whole event would not have happened. So at that moment, the FBI really started looking at ballistic testing and all kinds of stuff, because before that, they just took the ammunition manufacturer's word that, this bullet has stopping power, this will do this and this will do that. And that event, it did not work well at all. The bullet performed, it expanded all of that, but it did not do its job well. And at the whole end of that event, Agent Morales, Ed Morales, he was hit in his left arm, and his left arm was immobilized. So he took his revolver, his 686 that had 38 Special Plus P ammunition in it, he approached the car and he shot both of them, missed a few times. The last 3 rounds pretty much put fatal wounds on the suspects. So that 38 special load actually saved the day. And what that 38 special load was, from what I read, there was 3 loads at the time. There was the Winchester, there was the Federal, and the Remington. And I guess the Winchester was a little bit hard. The Remington was a little bit too soft, so it mushroomed too much. But the Federal brand apparently is what Ed Morales was using in his 686 revolver. So I picked up some of the Federal brand. FBI load, 158 grain, semi-wad cutter hollow point. And I believe this stuff says it's rated at 900 feet per second. So here's the load. So one question that comes to mind when I think about this event, it makes me wonder if Jerry Dove had not had that 9mm pistol and he had had a revolver instead loaded with that, like a 4-inch revolver, and he made that exact shot, would that have stopped the event? Or if Ed Morales had made that shot, would that have stopped the event? But did that 38 special cartridge, if it were used, would it have actually saved the day and stopped the event? Because 2 things came from that. One, ballistic testing, because that 9mm failed, but also because the suspect went around while Jerry Dove and Ben Grogan were reloading their revolvers. They didn't have enough capacity. He killed them because they were reloading their revolvers behind a car. So that made the FBI say, hey, we need to not have agents reloading after 6 rounds, and we need to have cartridges that are going to go deeper. And that pretty much changed everything at that point, and there was a lot of ballistic testing that came from that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do a ballistic test the best I can to replicate what I believe happened that day as far as terminal ballistics, and see if I can get an answer to that. So I'm going to use my Ruger Security 9 with a 4-inch barrel. We're going to test the Winchester Silvertip 115 grain, and then my 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 686 with the FBI load. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get with those, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do with the ballistic test. So with our ballistic test, I normally like to put 4 layers of denim on the front here and 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent ribs, and clear ballistics. I'll probably still do that, but considering this particular shot did not hit any bone, I'm not going to do that. And also, I couldn't figure out exactly what the suspects were wearing, what Platt was wearing that day. But it was South Florida and it was in April, so I'm gonna assume it was a t-shirt. So I got a single layer t-shirt on the first part here, and this is 6 inches, and after 6 inches I got 2 layers of t-shirt. So it'd be like 1 layer on the start of the arm, another layer going through the back of the arm, and then a 3rd layer on the chest. And the reason why I'm using 6 inches, I know it's not an exact 1-to-1 ratio, is because 2 inches of this on both sides will really represent the skin elasticity. So this really is about like going through an arm and into the thoracic cavity. So we're going to go into this clear ballistics, and we'll see with that particular shot that I think happened that day where we did not hit any bone. Would that 38 special have done a better job? Would it have penetrated 2 inches more? You know, that 9mm stopped an inch away from the heart. You would think you need about 2 more inches to successfully hit the heart. So that's my question. I've been wondering for a while if that 38 would have done better. And we know that the 38 saved the day, but most of those shots were headshots through an automobile. And I'll try to replicate that as well in some of my target portion of this video. So enough talk here. Well, let's get started with this test. So the velocity is listed on both of those boxes. Our 9mm 115 grain is rated at 1225 feet per second. I believe that is through a 4-inch barrel. And our 38 Special Plus P is rated at 890 feet per second. Again, I believe that's through a 4-inch barrel. So we'll see with our Winchester Silvertip through this 4-inch barrel how close we get to that 1225 feet per second. No read. That's weird. $11.87. Very interesting. I've went about 6 months without having a single error read with that. So for whatever reason, it doesn't want to read that. So this is rated at 890 feet per second. I'll take that 1187 feet per second. That's fine. We'll see what I get with that 38 Special if it'll read. 946, 950, 984. No read. 928, 936. So I think it was just a silver coloring of that bullet. Had some chronograph error reads. So that's a little bit warmer than what this is supposed to be, but it's close enough. We're only, you know, probably 40 feet per second, 50 above what the FBI load is, and that is the FBI load. So let's hit our Ballistics gel block and see how these compare. All right, so this is the shot that might determine, you know, what would have happened that day if a 38 special would have hit instead of this 9mm. So on that day, that 9mm really underpenetrated. Now, like I said, it's possible they changed this design since then, but let's see what we get here with our 9mm. All right, let me hit that with our 38 special FBI load. Let's go take a look. And yeah, I'm honestly seeing the issue. I don't think they've changed that bullet design with that 9mm. What I think happened is that because it didn't hit any ribs, and I know from, you know, ballistic testing where I put rib simulation in, the rib simulation always lowers the size of that bullet diameter because it's kind of like shrinking the bullet, it's ripping the petals back more. So what we see here is that we got under penetration by all standards. You know, this is where the 1986 Shootout is where that 12-inch minimum came from. They determined that you need at least 12 inches to hit the heart from a side shot typically, and you don't want to get over 18 inches. So what we're seeing here is, yeah, we got a lot of energy dump up here with our 9mm, but we only penetrated to almost 10.5 inches. Camera parallax will make me look like I'm not lining my finger up with that bullet because it's in the back of the block, but I absolutely am. We are at 10.5 inches. So that is under penetration. That's not hitting the 12-inch minimum. So that's 1.5 inches away from 12 inches. That makes sense that that stopped 1 inch away from the heart. Now, if the FBI load would have been used, we have about 17 inches even. That would have been, you know, another 6.5 inches. That would have completely ended the fight. And we wouldn't really be where we are in terms of ballistics if this event had not happened with that silver tip. So this is a very historic event, you know, shown into ballistics gel. So now what I want to do is I want to put the rib simulation in. I want to do my normal test I do where I do 3 inches of clear ballistics with 4 layers of denim on the front, 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, and see how it would perform if it would have hit ribs. So let's do that. All right, forgive the dirt on the first 3-inch piece there, it fell on the ground. But what we have now is 4 layers of denim, 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent our pectoral muscle, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard. So this is going to indicate if it hit a bone or a rib. And we'll see how our 9mm silver tip compares this way. All right, let's set that back up and hit it with our 38. All right, 38 special. See how this does. Let's go take a look. All right, so that changed everything. Hitting a rib simulation, I don't think it's really so much as the denim changing it, because we do see energy dump in this first 3 inches. It's kind of hard to see, but it's there. Big old energy dump there. And what we see with both of these had expansion after going through that first 3 inches. But that lowered that expansion enough down with our 9mm silver tip that we got about 15.5 inches of penetration. With our 38 special plus P, about 15.25 inches. So honestly, if a rib or the arm bone would have been hit, there would have been more penetration and that threat would have been stopped, and the FBI probably would have kept using the silver tip for a long time, and we would probably never have the 40 Smith & Wesson as a result. There'd probably be a lot of things that would be a lot different here if a bone would have been hit. Very, very interesting. We clearly see how low that silver tip penetrated without hitting a rib simulation. So, you know, I didn't think it would be this clear to me, but it is extraordinarily clear what happened. Yeah, overexpansion because it didn't hit a rib. Very interesting. So let's take a close-up look at these, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a drill, kind of how Ed Morales, you know, ended the fight the best I can, and I'll show you what I mean. All right, so taking a close-up look at these bullets, our 9mm through our plain gel, our silver tip, a lot of expansion. And that level of expansion is fine if you have a lot of energy behind it. But we saw our energy wasn't that good with, and we only got one velocity read, but that's typically what I've seen with this. It's not a particularly powerful round. So because it expanded that big and didn't have enough power behind it, it slowed down. If you had an extra 50 foot-pounds of energy behind this, if this were a plus P or something, probably would penetrate enough. Now our plain gel shot with our 38 special, that actually looks really good. We have a really good mushrooming expansion. I could see how that would be a pretty good fight stopper. Now when we go through our medium density fiberboard, this is very interesting here. Huge change to that 9mm diameter. Our 38 special though, other than one side being kind of bent a little, there's almost no change to that bullet versus the plain gel. That's a fantastic little cartridge there. It's a little smoky, but I'd carry that. That performed really well. But when we compare our 9mm through MDF here, you know, that denim really played a part in it, and it shrunk down that expansion, but it actually made it usable at that point. There would be enough penetration. So that's one of those things, it's hard to judge it. I think most of the time you're going to hit bone, most of the time you're going to hit a good amount of fabric. So I think most of the time this would be okay, but in that rare situation where you don't hit a bone, you're going to get overexpansion. I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, overexpansion, but yeah, you're going to get overexpansion. It might not penetrate enough depending on the situation. As where this 38 special, it performed ideally, it performed consistently regardless of the simulation we did. So between the two of these cartridges, I would definitely pick that 38 special and be like, that's a pretty good choice, to be honest. At least do a 4-inch barrel. If we test it through a 2-inch or 3-inch, we might get a little bit less performance, but pretty good. 9mm, not so much. So that's a close-up look at those. All right, so the end of the event happened where, you know, Ed Morales had to get up with his 686 revolver with just 6 rounds of ammo and try to stop the suspects, Platt and Maddox, from escaping with another agent's car, and they were going to back over top of, you know, agents that were already down, and he needed to stop them. And his left arm was completely gone. He didn't have the use of it. He had tunnel vision. So I'm going to put on these glasses that have stickers all over them that I can only see right through the center here, give me that tunnel vision effect. And he went forward one-handed, and he fired a few rounds starting at about here, about 10 yards. And then he fired a few more rounds as he went forward. He missed the first 3 basically, or I think the third one hit, but it didn't do a whole lot of damage. And then once he got up point blank, he was like inside the car and shot him a couple more times. So I can't replicate exactly every one of these hits, like here exactly, but I'm going to do my best here to replicate the best I can here. So I'm going to put my left arm in my pocket here, back pocket, and see what that's like. So here we go. All right, let's look at that. All right, so Ed Morales did say that, you know, he lined up his sights and he looked and he saw his front and his back sights. I didn't, and thus I just kind of looked down the barrel, but that's something I practice a lot anyways. And I don't know how I did so well, to be honest. I was thinking I missed all these shots because I wasn't really trying to make these hits. I got 2 here in center, 1 up here, and I believe this would have been Platt, and then center mass, shoulder, lower. So not too bad overall I didn't hit my sign. Huh, interesting. So that's definitely some interesting results and some information that, you know, it would be 10 times harder in that moment though. When you're injured, people around you are shot, your ears are ringing, tunnel vision would probably be a lot worse. He'd be very weak. He was going in on a consciousness, so he would definitely have to really line those sights up. You know, as for me, I'm not having any issues today. I'm feeling pretty good. So just looking down the barrel worked for me, but obviously if I was injured like that and that was the situation, I wouldn't shoot that well by just looking down the barrel and looking at the target. So I'm going to finish this video with our typical thing I do, where I just, you know, shoot at my steel, see what kind of practical accuracy these things have for me. All right, I'm just going to see how accurate I can be in slow fire with these. So 25 yards. See what I can do with our 9mm. All right. 38 special. I knocked that a little bit. Let's back it up a little. All right, 40 yards from target, our old dick and drill distance. 9mm. All right, I don't know where that first one went. 38 special. Let's continue to be pretty accurate for me. Let me back up a little more. All right, 75 yards. So this is just for fun. I mention that every time I do it now because of how many times people got on and start screaming at me that I'm training to shoot people from 75 yards. I'm not. It's just a challenge for fun. So 9mm. Let's see if I can make any hits with this. That was a challenge to shoot. First few shots I aimed center mass and I shot high right by several feet. So let's try a 38 special here. A little bit high. Now I got a speed loader, and it is kind of a myth that speed loaders were not used in that event. Ed Morales says they did have speed loaders, so I'll take his word over what people say. Keep going with this. I have to aim a little bit low because these are lifting up a little bit high. Oh, almost had them all. So we can see here that a revolver, I'm gonna say it, revolver from distance is more accurate, especially one shooting subsonic ammo. So there's a lot to learn from this test here, but the thing that stands out more than anything else really is that silver tip ammunition. It failed. And at the time it failed, there was not a set standard that you had to get 12 inches minimum. That wasn't a set standard. And I think what happened is, you know, this is 10.5 inches, you know, organic gel penetrates a little bit less. So they probably got 10 inches and they're like, we needed 2 more inches. So our standard is you have to have at least 12 inches. Now, when they do that, a lot of people say that the bone is calculated into ballistics gel penetration. I don't think it is, because bone will change the diameter of that bullet, and we saw that, and when we hit the rib simulation, it went much deeper. So the 12-inch minimum really is through just plain gel. We want to get at least 12 inches because if it's going to expand that big, we want to make sure it's going to penetrate enough. So at the time, that cartridge didn't fail because there were no set standards for failing or passing. But we see after the fact, yeah, that's the failure that happened. That stands out significantly. So that's not really a good round to use for law enforcement. It would be a fine round for regular personal protection for regular people, because, you know, typically people that are concealed carry like me, we're not, you know, conducting felony traffic stops and trying to stop armed gunmen. Not that that, I guess, couldn't happen in some weird way where you had to shoot at an armed gunman, but my point here is that most of the time we're not going to be running forward and shooting at people with rifles because we're trying to arrest them. So for law enforcement, absolutely they needed something better. So this is a terrible round for law enforcement for that 9mm. Now with the 38 Special, the question is answered. If Jerry Dove had not been carrying a 9mm, which there'd be no reason why he wouldn't. He was part of the SWAT team that was thought of as a better weapon because you had more capacity. If he had been carrying Ed Morales' 38 Special in a 4-inch barrel and probably even in a shorter barrel, and he made that same shot, we would not be where we are today. And if Ed Morales had made that shot with his revolver, we saw that no matter what, that bullet mass penetrated enough. So very changing when it comes to what happened to the FBI, what happened to ballistics and ballistic testing. And it all centers around this 9mm cartridge here. It doesn't necessarily center around that 38 Special cartridge, but we can see that that was a very consistent cartridge, and there's really nothing wrong with that cartridge. I would have no issue carrying that 38 Special Plus P cartridge myself. Seemed like it performed really well, so I'll probably test it through the shorter barrel and see what we get with that. So that's what you get today. Very interesting test. I learned a little bit. Stuff I kind of already knew, but I didn't think it would actually play out in my ballistic testing, and it played out. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.